Welcome to a discussion on social movement in India. In this discussion, first we will develop a small understanding about social movement. Then we will talk about the historicity of proliferation of social movement in India and their transformation. At the end, we will be talking about interlinkages between social movement, its interest articulation, response of the states towards social movement, and the identity formation therein. So let us understand what do we mean by social movement. When we talk of social movement, we usually talk about a kind of aberration of unusual social phenomenon. But we have to accept differently that social movement are social phenomenon, they are social episodes. They are social episodes in that way, they are the collective initiative undertaken by the people to bring about changes or resist changes in some of the crucial elements of the society. The crucial elements may be in the thought, the beliefs, the values, the economic arrangement, and also in the wider processes and arrangement affecting the functioning of the society. So when we talk about a social movement, we usually talk about an arrangement that is already inbuilt in the society, that is a part of societal arrangement. So when we talk about society or social movement, we are also to talk about certain element of the social movement. What are those elements of social movement? Usually we consider, number one, this is to be organized collective efforts. It is organized in that way, that it is organized by an organization, so that people are guided for certain collective action through that organization. It is to have a body of identified leadership. It is to be founded of certain ideology. It is the ideology that gives recognition or legitimacy to the action taken by that movement. It is also guided by a collective endeavor. That endeavor identifies the interest of the movement. So what are those elements we talk about? It is the leadership, it is the organization, it is the ideology, and it is the identity that is constructed by social movement. And simultaneously, social movement also undergo a vast process of change and transformation in the society, with the transformation in the vital element of social movement. Now let us talk about the interlinkages between identity and social movement. Unless we are in a position to know the interlinkages, we will not be able to know the whole developmental journey of social movement in the Indian subcontinent. When we talk about identity, we talk about identity as the change agent. It's a collectivity, it is collective manifestation of the society. But not all collective manifestations are the identities. It may be a descriptive element, but it is not a transformative element. When you are talking about identity, we are talking about an identity not as an essence, an identity that is a transformative agent in the society. It is a self-conscious collectivity that aims to bring change in the thought and action and in the institutional arrangement of the society. So by talking about identity, we are talking about it acquires and creates a new meaning for itself, also meaning for others. So it's a kind of a social construction of that collective phenomenon. Simultaneously, we have to accept that when we are talking about identity is never singular, it's a plural identity. Every individual is having a plural identity. Identities may be reflected in terms of professional identity, in terms of one's ethnic identity, in terms of one nationalist identity, in terms of one linguistic identity. But all identities are not segregated, they are interlinked. It's a kind of a people's choice which identity they will assert at what point of time. When we are talking identities, interlinkages with movement, we are talking about identity assertion in terms of a single identity, not that multiple identity assertion. Social movement, as we understand, it rejuvenates the predefined identity and creates new identity in the society. So the interlinkages is that social movements are also change agents in the society. So when we are intersecting social movement with identity. We are talking about a kind of a dynamics of change which is inserting in an agency in the society. So social movement in that way rejuvenating the pre-existing identities and creating new identities for the people in society. If we talk about the social movement in India, we have to accept this fact that ideationally India is epitomized as a country with a heritage of ancient civilization, with vast spirit of accommodation, peace and non-violence. In reality, however, India is laden with a host of contradiction between tradition and modernity, prosperity and poverty, enlightenment, ignorance, the vices and virtues, and globalization and localization. So what we find two images of India. One image is that it is a country of ancient civilization with a culture of accommodation, prosperity and non-violence. Simultaneously, we find a lot of anomalies. Those anomalies are reflected in terms of poverty, illiteracy, a kind of a varieties of other contradiction that is reflected in the society. So those contradiction widely contributes for the proliferation of social movement in India. What are those anomalies? That is productivity, sustained hunger. Take into consideration the element of productivity from the land. In 1970s, the per hectare productivity from the land was roughly around 9 quintal. Now it has increased to the extent of 26 quintal. So what a kind of quantum increase in the productivity of the land. But simultaneously we find in our country 19% of the people live below the poverty line. We find phenomenal economic growth, that is at times it has gone up to the level of 9.4%, but we find a kind of a social vulnerability, a huge number of the people living below the poverty line. More than 28% of the rural people live below the poverty line in the country. There has been prosperity of a section of the people. I mean, in our country, more than 10% of the people, they control more than 60% of the resources. It's a huge kind of prosperity, but simultaneously we find a downward mobility from the small peasant to tenant to agricultural laborer to the migrant laborer. So we kind of enormous digital development, simultaneously a country conditioned by digital divide because of lack of electricity, a computer, laptop, a large segment of the people deprived of the benefits of digital revolution taking place in the country. The growth is not accompanied by employment generation in the country. That's why we find the economic growth, simultaneously huge quantum of unemployment in the country. There is also a huge burden of illiteracy in the country. More than 25% of the people are literate. Only 27% of the people can go to the doorstep of a higher education. Child labor, child marriage are the phenomena in the country. We find there is a huge urban quantum of urbanization in country. Around 32% of the people live in the urban areas, but all urban areas are having the slums. More than 20% of the urban people live in the slum areas. We are also having industrialization with displacement of the tribal people from their habitat. We are having enormous gender disparities in the society, which are reflected in the female sex ratio that is gradually declining. It is higher the economic growth, higher is the gender disparity in the society. Say Haryana, Delhi, Punjab is having least female sex ratio in the country. There is also the criminalization of the politics. It is despite being a land of spiritualism and ancient civilization, we find a huge number of our parliamentarians and the decision makers having the criminal background. 28% of our parliamentarians are having the criminal cases pending behind them. Also, country is also experiencing the whole phenomenon of violence and extremism in many parts of the country. So what we find a kind of contradiction, developmental deformities which has conditioned our country, and that has contributed to be a breeding ground of varieties of the movement, the tribal movement, the caste movement, the peasant and workers movement, the women's movement, the ethnic movement, the regional environmental movement, human rights movement, gay rights movement, animal rights movement, many various others movements. So what we find, varieties of the movement is taking place in our country against the backdrop of those social economic deformities in the society. But if we were to look into the social movement culture in our society, because it's a spiritual country. It's a country having a long history. So we can look into the history of proliferation of our movement in terms of reform movements or bhakti movements in the country. Because the deformity which we are talking about now, those are the economic and political deformities. But in our society, along with the civilizational journeys, there are varieties of other cultural anomalies, and the practice of caste system is another, social disparities are another, practice of untouchabilities are another. So those are, and also simultaneously downward mobility, a section of population especially belong to the lower caste or another. So these are the issues widely taken care of by many of the social movements. And say the early voices, these are not organized social movement, but those are the voices that were raised, at times individual form, but at times the collective forms. The 9th century, the Alvar, they first raised the whole issue of the untouchability. There is the issue of discrimination among the people. And then the 12th century, we find the Bir Shaiva movement. This is another religious movement started coming in. And the 15th and the 16th century saw the Bhakti and the Sufi movement in North India. All this movement talked about social inequalities, the caste prejudice, the untouchability those practiced in the society. So this preached the egalitarianism and humanity through the devotion to the God, and questioned the practice of untouchability and the caste inequality. So what is important that through this movement, that Bhakti movement, Sufi movement, the Alvar, and also Bir Shaiva movement, we find they question the practice of untouchability and caste in the society. And then the various social reform movement, like in 19th century, the social movement like Arya Samaj movement, Brahma Samaj movement, Ramakrishna mission, they strongly opposed the practice of the caste and conservatism among the Hindus. So various social ills, those who were there gradually raised by varieties of the social movements and social reform movements. And simultaneously we find, starting from the 19th and early 20th century, the anti-Brahmin movements of the Dalit across the several parts of the country under the auspice of the Satta Shandak Samaj and self-respect movement in Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, and the Adi Dravidian movement. All these raise the question against the practice of the caste system. So we find the social movement is not a new phenomenon in India. Social movement, along with the inheritance of varieties of the cultural practices, India has also inherited the culture of social movement in this country. If we are to look into some of those movements, maybe the indigenous peoples movement, tribal movement, maybe one who is widely documented in the social science literature. We should point out them. And in this movement, through this movement, they have raised the issue of oppression of the tribal people, both by the ruler and the outsiders. And they have created a space for themselves, both the cultural, social and economic space for their survival. Some of the movement of the mid-19th century, say Oraon and the Bhumis and the coal movement in 1830s and 1832 is quite important. The Santal revolt of 1855 and 1857, the Munda in 1874 to 1901, this widely continued the Munda movement. Then the Kawar movement of 1877 to 1880 in the eastern India against the oppression and infringement of their life, culture and land by the government official and the money lender. The Kukis in Manipur in 1917 and 1919, Santal, Oraon, Bhumij and other tribal in Jharkhand in 1940s to 1955, the Nagas in 1920s, Migo in 1960s, the Bodos in 1987, the Gorkha in West Bengal since 1980s. So what if the varieties of the tribal movement of the indigenous people have taken place in the country. Similarly, we find that is along this indigenous movement, we have found that the proliferation of the peasant movement in the country, that is the Tebaga movement in 1946-47, Telangana movement 1948 to 52, the Naxalite movement 1969-72. Tevaga movement took place against the backdrop of sharp downward mobility of the peasant from there in the rural society. The British had introduced the permanent settlement, and through this settlement they introduced a lot of intermediaries between this between the state and the actual cultivators. The intermediaries they tried to ensure their revenue collection through these varieties of intermediaries. In the process, the actual cultivators of the land, they got dislodged from the land, and the small owner of the land, many a time because of their poverty, they kept their land on mortgage system to big landowner or the money lender with a huge rate of interest. And when they lost their land, unable to pay the interest, they lost the land to the money lender or the immediate cultivators. So when they are losing the land, some segment of them become the tenant or the sharecroppers in the same piece of land, with the condition that they will cultivate the land and they will give 50% of the produce to the landowner. Those who are not settled in this piece of land, they become either the agricultural laborer or migrated from the rural area to the other place of the country. And when in 1940s, out of famine, the condition of the small cultivators and the sharecroppers become precarious. They demanded that they should be given 2/3 of the share rather than 1/2 of the share of their produce. And this was a recommendation given by the Bengal Land Revenue Commission. Bengal Land Revenue Commission in 1940s. For the implementation, they organized themselves and they forcefully took the crop in their own courtyard and declined to give the share to the big landowner until unless they agreed to the 2/3 of the share. And the state was in favor of the landowners because it was the British rule. And ultimately, in many places, there was firing, and many of the peasants they died out of the police firing, and that movement collapsed. So Tevaga, that is 2/3 of the share in favor of the sharecroppers, that collapsed in 1946 and 47. But that gave a new idea for the land reform in the country. And interestingly, in the land reform program in India in 1952 onward, the ideas those were generated out of the Tevaga movement, those are incorporated in the land reform legislation. That is, surplus vested land were distributed among the landless poor. Tenant security become one of the component of the land reform law. So that became the legal legislation. The Telangana movement also took place simultaneously in 1948 and 52 in the Telangana region, especially for the security of the malt cultivators, sharecroppers and agricultural laborers. Naxalite movement took place in 1969-72 in Bengal, and against the same issue, though the sharecroppers are given the tenancy rights through the Land Reform Act, but there is a huge gap between the land reform legislation and the implementation of the same. And again the sharecroppers, agricultural laborers and the small tenants, they came in the forefront of the mobilization by a group of communist workers who formed the Naxalite political party in 1969 onward, and they mobilized themselves to ask for their rights. So these are basically the radical movement. They are guided by radical ideology, asks for forceful occupation of the land and seizure of the state power through guerrilla warfare. So this movement took place in 1969-1972, and most important part is that this movement was spearheaded by the peasants of mostly in the backward parts of the country. Over a period of time, this radical movement got transformed in India, took the part of reformative movement. How it happened that the radical movement, all these three which I talked about, those movement they are guided by a single radical ideology and the secret organization, and there is very specific goal. They are hostile against the institution of the state, the norms. They ask for structural change. They ask for egalitarianism. This is the radical thought was part of this movement and guided by radical ideology, and they converted the peasants to be the change agent, and they encountered the state oppression, and simultaneously this movement spoke against the dependency and their domination by the landowners. The important part is that these radical movements are short-lived, and this radical movement took place only in the remote area of the country, and this is that those episodes continued. Naxalite, Tebhaga continued in the period between, as you pointed out, that is 1946-47, Telangana 1948-52, and Naxalite 1969-72. This movement gradually, over a period of time, the mobilization of the peasant have taken mostly the institutionalized form. The political parties, that is the Naxalite group, those who spearheaded the Naxalite movement and those who radicalized it, a section of them also participated gradually, took part in the democratic process. One section they pointed out that radicalism is not their ideology is the people's empowerment, people's upliftment. So by doing so, a segment of them participated in the election process and also became part of the state power. And gradually, when it became the reformative movement, now the vast part of the peasant society in Bengal and in Andhra Pradesh and other part, those who experienced the radical peasant movement, now they experience the reformative movement. Now what has been the character of the reformative movement? It is, in earlier case it was a specific call, now it's a diverse call. Earlier it was guided by hostility, now it is guided by hostility, but adhering to norm and asking for reformative change. So whatsoever the hostility they are doing, it's a guided kind of a hostility, and that is adhering to certain norms of the democratic practice. Also they are asking for reformative change in terms of reform brought through the parliamentary process, the state legislature and the Parliament of India. Now earlier case it is the only one single ideology, now there are multiple ideology, that is even the Naxalite party, they are divided into various groups. One party taking part in the election and that party has gone for the non-institutionalized means. So many parties it has been the open organization and multiple ideology. Now earlier cases the mobilization started to create a change agent. In this case we find a group of beneficiaries created by the reformative movement to get the benefits from the state and the political parties. The state, the oppressed, the state denied the radical movement to manifest themselves, but the reformative movement usually it get a lot of patronage by the state at time. And in earlier case the mobilization was against the dependency and domination. Here the mobilization is for structural change and structure of dependency against the structure of dependency and domination. So what we find in the process of this reformative movement, a new structure of dependency on the political leader, a new structure of dependency of the political leader is imposed on the peasant, tenant and the agricultural laborer. So what you find, a new trend of mobilization has taken place over a period of time, where the mobilization is shifted from radicalism to reformative movement. Now India has seen the varieties of the movement over a period of time, and all these movements has created a new kind of phenomena, new kind of identity. It has created a space of new kind of response from the state. Let us see what kind of response it has got from the state with a different kind of a movement. As we told, the Tebhaga movement 1946-47, nature of the organization and ideology was radical, so was the Telangana movement, these were radical. The types of demand, it was explicitly economic and implicitly political, and similarly was the Telangana explicitly economic, implicitly political, because they are looking for a larger change in the political structure of the society. The Telangana movement took for overthrowing the state. So also the Naxalite movement talked about the overthrowing the state. So it was implicitly political. The nature of the state response, it was a strong opposition to it in both this movement. So was also the Naxalite movement. It is a strong opposition against the state. Now the social collectivities involved are identities formed out of it. Interestingly, the Tevaga movement, it was the scheduled tribe women from women are the main, and they are fostering a class-based peasant identity. They are considered, they are a peasant defined in terms of class, having least resources against the others. So class was considered a category. Within the class, these social categories, the SC, ST women were the main categories. So also in the case of Telangana, so was in the case of Naxalite movement. What we find, the class category was constructed as an interpretative category. Within that, the social categories are present in the form of caste, ethnicity, scheduled tribe, other backward classes, and women. Then let us come to the farmers movement took place in 1990s. The farmers movement especially took place in the agriculturally advanced part of the country. Say it took place in Tamil Nadu, it took place in Haryana, Punjab, Western UP. These places, and their demand was exclusively different. They are their economic and implicitly political. Economic demands were that they asked for tax exemption, they asked for subsidy, agricultural subsidy, they asked for higher prices for agricultural produce, and also simultaneously a section of the political leaders of the farmers movement, they also shared power with the state legislature and the parliament. What was the nature of the state response to it? Because these movements were widely institutionalized movement. It is a partly institutionalized and partly radical, and it was government was at time oppositional when it was radical, but it was accommodative in terms of accepting varieties of the demand. So what kind of identity is fostered? It prominently represented by the OBC and the caste group from the middle layer of the caste hierarchy, and form an identity, that is the identity of the farmers and the rural. Most importantly, the farmers movement was in a position to project the issue of the rural India. Not only of the farmers, the issue of the rural India they want to present, and they brought in the forefront of discussion at all India level. So what we find a phenomenal change from the peasant movement to that of a farmers movement. Now here let us make a difference between the peasants and the farmers. Peasants are the people, those who are cultivating predominantly for the household consumption. They are not producing for the market. While a farmer are predominantly producing for the market, their motive for production is the profit and not for the subsistence. So there is phenomenal difference between these two categories, both in terms of land holding, earnings, and also at term caste categories. Let us come to the movement. What we talk about, this movement took place, the regional and the ethnic movement. Those were taking place in many parts of the country. We have seen the Telangana movement. We have seen in the Jharkhand the regional movement. In Madhya Pradesh there was a movement in the Chhattisgarh. So varieties of the movement took place, and this movement at times those were radical, at times those were institutionalized. And what they demanded a separate identity within the state itself in terms of language and in terms of their ethnicity. And what we find that ultimately, take the example in terms of ethnicity, indigenous background, the tribal state of Jharkhand is formed. Similarly, Chhattisgarh is another state is formed. Telangana in terms of language, another is formed. So what we find that in that case, the approach of the state towards this movement, at times it has been oppositional, when it has been hostile, at times it has been accommodative, because the state has accommodated the demands, the aspiration that has grown out of this social movement. What we find, that kind of identities it is created, it has created mostly the ethnic identities based on the caste, based on the indigenous identity or linguistic identity. This movement has created a kind of a ethnic identity there. Now we find a kind of environmental movement that is manifested in many parts of the country. The environmental movement is the Chipko movement is one. Narmada Dam project is another. Silent Valley movement is another. So we have varieties of the environmental movement taking place in this country, and this importantly, the mobilization and ideology has been mostly institutionalized ideology, and explicitly their concern has been environmental, their concern has been the economic well-being of the affected people and the cultural identity of the people. And the state has been oppositional when these movements have been hostile, also sometimes negotiation and accommodation. Ultimately, what they have created an identity, a middle class intellectual identity of the leader, followed by localism of the localites. So we find a kind of identity, it has a global environmental ideology it has created, based on the participation of the people themselves. So we find a different kind of phenomenon, different kind of state response, the identity and approach are followed in this movement. Now the contemporary world also find a new kind of a movement, that is we find the lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual communities movement, and these movements are mostly institutionalized. And what you find that is having the forming of federation among the social movement, the issues of development and human rights. So these movements, they have also developed a kind of a federation, a kind of understanding locally and globally, and the state approach has been quite accommodative. That's why there has been amendment to certain segment of the Indian law to decriminalize the same-sex relationship in India. And the identities, what you find, the social activist, intellectual, and the MNC, they are the people, they are the activists. What you find from a local to a global, a different kind of identity formation is taking place in this kind of movement. So a different kind of social formation has taken place, different kind of collective formation has taken place out of this movement. Now we find another important phenomenon, that is a national global networking or national alliance, people's movement, social forum, a different kind of networking is taking place and different kind of a movement taking place now, because these movements are not necessarily founded on local, but there have been a lot of alliances, the people alliances for movement in India, social development forum in India, and social networking forum in India. So they are mostly institutionalized approach and forming federation among the local movements on the issue of development and human rights. And state has been quite accommodative to this movement, their demand, and to the identity they have created a global intellectual identity, and it's guided by mostly their attention is diverted against the multinational corporation. So what you find a new kind of formation, new kind of social alliances taking place. So far we have talked about some of the movement. These are indicative, these are not exhaustive, to show that the nature of social movement is linked to the nature of their organization, ideology, and their mobilization, and also types of demand they have articulated, types of responses they have got from the state, and also simultaneously types of identities they have created among themselves and against the others. Now we have to take into consideration when we are talking about social movement of India, we are talking about social movement in India has reflects a kind of an open society. It's an open society, that's why there has been the proliferation of several movements across the country. And these multiple movements, varieties of the movement taking place in a particular time, it reflects the depth of the plural culture in the society, the depth of democratic society, the democratic space provided by this society. So it shows the strength of the plural society, strength of the democratic culture of the society, and strength of the citizenship culture that is created over a period of time in Indian society. So what is important that this proliferation of movement in Indian society is to be seen against the backdrop of emergence of openness of Indian society in terms that is founded on plurality, founded on the democratic culture, founded on the assertion of citizenship, and that is influencing the creative idea of the state and the creative idea of the governance. So these movements are not autonomous for themselves. These movements are also playing the role as a creative agent to influence the action of the state and action of the governance. So by producing it, it's also producing new identities of the state as a new India, also new identity of a plural India. Then we find there is a dynamics of relationship of this movement, because many of these movements are not local. Many of this movement has developed a relationship with so many other global movements. The women's movement of India, environmental movements of India, gay lesbian movements in India. Now we find that is all these movements have developed a kind of a global linkages. That linkages shows the depth of Indian plural culture, the depth of democratic culture of the society, and the assertion of the citizenship. So by creating it, it has created an identity of a socially conscious democratic India, because democratic India is vibrant through the presence of civil society, through the presence of the assertions of social movement culture within this civil society in India. Now let us sum up what we have discussed in this lecture today. We have discussed, number one, the social movement, the needs of conceptualizing social movement in India, how these are to be conceptualized. Then we have discussed the historicity of the emergence of social movement of India. Then we discussed the varieties of social movement, how it has changed and transformed from radical to institutionalized culture in India. Then we talked about that how the issues and demands are accommodated within the democratic culture of Indian society, and the kind of identities formed within this social movement culture, and the linkage of Indian social movement within the open space provided by Indian polity. Thank you very much.